Here are the top 10 rookie running backs being drafted back in May according to our ADP. And obviously Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker have been massive hits so far, but what about the rest of them? Let's break down the rest of this rookie running back class. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what to do with James Cook in Dynasty. After a breakout week back in week 13 with over 100 total yards on 20 touches, including 6 receptions, Cook hasn't seen over 8 touches in the 2 weeks since. We thought that game would change Cook's usage for the better, but Buffalo didn't care at all, and Devin Singletary went right back to being the RB1 for the Bills. I mean, it's frustrating, it really is, but maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel because Devin Singletary is a free agent in the spring, and it's possible that he's allowed to walk and the keys are handed over to James Cook. That's the ultimate upside here. But more realistically, I think either Singletary is back or the Bills add another grinder type back into the mix with James Cook, which they can do in this free agent class. They can go out and get Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Damian Harris on the high end of this free agent class, or Jamal Williams, a Rashad Penny, Kareem Hunt, Deonta Foreman, more 1B guys that would still cut into Cook's workload. I don't believe that Cook goes into next season as the RB1 or RB1A of this Bills offense. So when I look at December ADP and I see James Cook ahead of guys like Antonio Gibson and AJ Dillon, I would take both of those guys over Cook. But on the flip side, Cook is behind David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, and Aaron Jones, and I would take the upside or age of Cook over those three. So he's priced pretty well, I think, and that doesn't really help me in knowing what to do with him. Drop a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think of Cook and how we should be viewing him, because I'm very interested to know what y'all think. Now, Rachaad White is a similar player to James Cook, but has shown a lot more already this season. In fact, since week 10, White is the RB20 in points per game and has seen 15 plus touches in 4 out of the 5 games, including target numbers of 5, 8, and 9. Of course, the 2 best weeks in that span were the games without Leonard Fournette, but even since Fournette's return, they've basically been splitting the work 50-50. This Bucs team can look entirely different here in just a couple months. Tom Brady might actually retire and stay retired, which would be the beginning of the rebuilding era for Tampa Bay. Mike Evans is going to be 30 years old. Leonard Fournette can be cut and save $3.5 million in the spring, or at worst, there is no way he's here in 2024. Rachaad White could become a huge part of this rebuilding offense as one of the few good young players on this team, and I actually believe that White would be given the keys to basically the entire backfield. If that were to happen, his upside is what we thought DeAndre Swift could be, what we've seen Travis Etienne do recently, and that's the type of player that you could be getting from White in less than a year. So I'm willing to buy at full price right now. I don't need a discount here to buy Rachaad White. I'd be trading away George Pickens straight up for White, and you might honestly be able to get something on top of White to move away from Pickens. Trade down or laterally from guys like Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. Add like a Sky Moore or a Chase Claypool kind of player to Miles Sanders or David Montgomery to go get Rachaad White. Buy now before Fournette is cut and White's price climbs into Dynasty RB1 territory. Next up is a player that I don't really want to talk about because I've talked about him ad nauseum on this channel for months. The best breakdown that I have of Dameon Pierce can still be found in the 2022 rookie redraft video from about a month ago. So let me just drop that piece in here right from that video. And I truly hope that the Texans keep him long term. I really do. But I know the NFL. I've watched time and time again these highly productive late round and undrafted backs just get tossed aside for a shinier toy, a higher drafted back in a year or two. We've seen it with Michael Carter, Elijah Mitchell, James Robinson, Phillip Lindsay, Chris Carson, Marlon Mack, Jordan Howard, even Aaron Jones. And for some reason, the NFL puts a value on where they drafted players, and that's led to very productive backs getting replaced or at least have competition brought in for shortly after their breakouts. And that is my fear with Dameon Pierce. The Texans have 5 realistic draft picks in 2023 where a running back that they draft would have better or equal draft capital to Dameon Pierce, and then another 5 in 2024 if he were to survive 2023. It's not an if, but a when for Dameon Pierce, and the clock starts in just a few months. All right, let's skip over RB 6 through 9 from May for now and go down to rookie RB 10 from May, Brian Robinson, who has been on a precipitous climb since then to now being the RB 25 in December ADP ahead of his teammate Antonio Gibson. Now, I am recording this on Friday, so I have no idea what Robinson did against the Niners on Christmas Eve, but the 3 weeks prior, he has rushed for 105, 96, and 89 yards and has had 20 plus touches in 2 of those 3 games. Now, my buddy Justin has been advising to sell Robinson recently, largely because of his poor efficiency on the ground and his lack of receiving work. Well, he's rushed for over 4 yards a carry in the last 3 weeks, something that he he didn't even do once in the 7 games prior, so that is kind of being answered right now. The receiving work, though, is still an issue from a fantasy perspective. I don't think anybody, though, was looking at Robinson coming out of college and citing his receiving chops, but in order to be a top-end back for fantasy, you need receptions. Otherwise, you rely entirely on your efficiency on the ground and scoring touchdowns. So far, through 10 games, Robinson has seen 10 targets, which is not great. To be a fantasy RB1, you generally need about 40 to 45 targets in an entire season, unless your name is Derrick Henry or Nick Chubb. If Robinson can't get to that point, then his ceiling is severely lowered. I mean, just look at Miles Sanders this season. He's on a 17-game pace of 1,300 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns on over 260 carries, but he's also on pace for only 30 targets, which is why he's currently the RB16 in points per game. Think about that. 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, not even a fantasy RB1. Joe Mixon, meanwhile, has 60% of the rushing numbers that Miles Sanders had, yet has already seen double the receiving work, which is why Mixon is averaging 2.5 points per game more than Miles Sanders. So unless Robinson suddenly starts seeing 3 to 4 targets a game, his ceiling is kind of low, and he's stuck as a mid to back end RB2, which, don't get me wrong, is totally fine, and we need guys like that. But that production is also largely replaceable. I would be buying Robinson if it was an upgrade from my RB3 or in a larger package deal to shed some age for my team, but I would not be buying Robinson individually on the idea that he could be an RB1 and trade down from guys that have much higher ceilings than him. Don't trade away guys like J.K. Dobbins straight up for Robinson. Don't trade away Najee, A.J. Dillon, Rachaad White, Tony Pollard. Keep those guys because they have much higher ceilings, and try to go get Robinson in a different way. So those are the big names that I wanted to hit on from this 2022 rookie class, but let me just quickly run through the rest and give a 5-second take on what to do with each of them. So first up, Isaiah Spiller, he's a hold and stash as a handcuff to Austin Eckler. Zamir White stashed as a handcuff with the upside of Josh Jacobs potentially not returning in free agency. Jalen Warren, also a huge stash as a handcuff with some more upside as well. Zonovan Knight, basically everything that I just said with Jalen Warren, maybe a little bit more just because he's actually producing right now. Tyler Algier, he's a hold and just see what happens in free agency or the draft. Tyrion Davis-Price, hold for now. Jordan Mason, stashed. Hassan Haskins, I'm fine with cutting right now. He hasn't done anything. He's been a healthy scratch for a large majority of the games. Pierre Strong, I'd be holding just to see what happens with Dameon Harris in free agency, but he's probably a cut candidate, and I'd be totally fine if you wanted to cut him now. Keontae Ingram, major stash as a handcuff with upside. Tyler Beatty, he's a cut. Kyron Williams, I mean, hold and see what happens. Maybe sell for like a third right now. Isaiah Pacheco, just take everything that I said about Dameon Pierce, multiply it by like 5 because he's a 7th round pick. CH is going to be back next year, and I really wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs draft a running back in the draft this year. So he's a major sell for me right now. Jerome Ford, major stash with Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson both being free agents. Kevin Harris, again, like Pierre Strong, hold just to see what happens with Dameon Harris, but I'm not really looking for all that much, and he might honestly be cuttable as well. Treston Ebner, stash for now, but he's probably getting buried again by the draft or free agency, and if that happens, he's probably cuttable. And everybody else from this class is a cut for me. Don't waste a roster spot on them, especially if you're already stashing multiple guys from this list already. Go get an extra tight end or a wide receiver or something instead, and see if you can do something with a better stash player. And if you're curious how this class's wide receivers look under this same kind of process, you can check out that video for receivers right up here.